So as I said earlier, you might think that researching is going to be easy, but I think you'll find that it's really not. It can be fun, but it definitely isn't going to be easy. So you have to develop a research strategy. The first thing that you have to do is make sure that you allot yourself enough time to research your speech. And you also have to allot time to write the speech itself. And I can promise you that researching your speech is always going to take you a lot longer than you expect it to. Because maybe you have found almost all of the sources you need, but you need one more source, and you just have to find that one source, and it takes you longer than you expect. And so you are going to spend a significant amount of time researching. It's not a one and done type of deal. So you need to figure out how much time you need to spend researching your speech. You also need to determine your needs and figure out what information you have about your topic already and what gaps you have in your knowledge that need to be filled. And then you can start finding resources. Now there's two major areas of resources that we can use: non-academic resources and academic resources. Let's talk about non-academic sources first. Non-academic sources include things like books, periodicals, newspapers, websites, and encyclopedia. Basically, a non-academic source is a source that's written for the layperson. It's written for the general public. And so, generally speaking, it's really easy to understand. It doesn't use a ton of technical language that you wouldn't be able to understand if you were only in that area, right? So, each of these sources has its benefits as well as its drawbacks. With books, for example, one of the benefits of a book is that it's very carefully looked at before it's published. It's not only written by the author, but it's also looked at by an editor to make sure that everything looks okay, that everyone's facts are straight, all that kind of stuff. But this takes time. So oftentimes, the information that's printed in a book is going to be outdated. So especially if you have a topic that is particularly high-paced, that changes quite frequently, using a book might not be the best place to start. It might be a good place to get background information or historical information, but brand new information typically isn't going to appear in a book. With periodicals, we have general interest periodicals like The New Yorker, People Magazine, Time Magazine, things like that, as well as specialized periodicals, special interest, such as Sports Illustrated, Vogue, House and Garden, those sorts of things. And these periodicals are published periodically, right? They're either published once a week, or else they're published once a month or once a quarter, but they come out more frequently than a book does. So it has slightly more up-to-date information. With even more up-to-date information are newspapers, because they're publishing every single day, if not really every single hour nowadays, what with the New York Times and Washington Post and most of our major news sources being online now. So newspapers are a great place to find really up-to-date information. The only problem with newspapers is that oftentimes when you're looking at a newspaper article online, you'll hit a paywall. Luckily for you, your school has paid for specific databases to get you behind those paywalls so that you don't have to actually pay for access. You can simply access it through the school. And of course, websites and encyclopedias are really great ways to get information as well. With websites, you have to be a little bit more cautious because really anyone can publish anything online. There's no checking system. So you have to be the judge of whether or not something is suitable for use in a speech. And encyclopedias, although they don't really exist, or rather we don't use them as much in the analog anymore, right? It would probably be difficult to find a full encyclopedia these days. We have encyclopedias that exist online as well. And these are good for giving really general overviews of various different topics. So, like I said, some benefits and drawbacks to each of these non-academic sources. With academic sources, We have things like scholarly books, scholarly articles, and databases. And your school has access to each of these things. And so I'm going to show you in another video how you can use the school's databases to access scholarly books as well as articles. Now, the benefit that comes with academic sources is that they are very carefully checked. They are written by the author, they are looked at by peers of that author who are also experts in the field, and then they are also looked at by editors who are also in that field. So academic sources have a lot of different pairs of eyes on them before they ever go to print. So you know that the information in academic sources is probably going to be decent, if not really, really good. Academic sources are an excellent place to usually find original research that researchers have done. It's that primary research that we talked about before. So generally speaking, when you're reading a newspaper, it says something to the effect of, a new study has shown that X, Y, and Z. That new study likely came from a scholarly article. So this is the primary source, whereas in this case, the newspaper is the secondary source. Academic sources are really good sources of new information. However, sometimes they can be very difficult to read, because generally speaking, these academic sources are using very technical language that really you would only understand if you were a part of that group. So oftentimes you have to start with non-academic sources and get background information on your topic before you can then dive in and start to understand those academic sources.